Alrighty, what is up, you guys? It has been quite some time. This is my first video of 2022. Forgive me for not doing any recaps for January, February, or March. Just decided I felt kind of burned out. Kind of felt like I just wanted to take a break. And also, in many ways, this market just didn't feel exciting to really talk about. That's not to say I haven't made decent money. I have. But in terms of, if you've been trading this year, if you're a small cap trader this year, I think you would agree it's just different this year, and arguably so, or it makes sense because 2021 was such an insane year that it only makes sense that this year is just a little bit tougher, a little bit more tougher. Maybe some traders are killing it, but for me personally, it's definitely been tougher, definitely been more energy draining, and so that definitely extruded into me wanting to make videos. I just didn't feel motivated, but this week or this month, I definitely feel motivated considering it has been my first red month in over 5 years. Actually, I think it's like 4 years and 11 months, but the last red month was 2017, and I believe, May 2017. I lost $19. Oh, it's crazy looking back. And I lost $250 in April of 2017. So, and then I, made money in June 2017, this $377. And this was the first green month to lead to this streak that I've had up until now. So quite a run, quite an awesome run I've had. And, did I think it was going to last forever? Absolutely not. I didn't really keep track. I knew I was having green month after green month after green month, but I didn't really care about the streak in particular because I knew, if I'm going to trade 10, 20, 30 years, the red month is absolutely coming. There's no way escaping that. So the fact that I am red for April, it doesn't really feel that bad. I kind of got what I deserved, especially how I traded, especially given how tough the market's been. And so we're just going to dive into that, how I got here, why I got here, and so forth. So the first thing I want to mention is it really came down to, this one bad week. If I just really mitigated and reduced this 1 week, I probably would be green. Now, even then, it still doesn't take away the fact that my win rate is 38%, which you can be profitable with a 38% win rate. Don't get me wrong. But for my personal style and my personal strategy and just the last, coming up on 6 years of trading based on how I trade well and when I trade well, I haven't had this low win rate also since I've been unprofitable. I think the lowest win rate I got during this month was like 33%. We can go back like 2017, 2016, 38%, 43%. I actually was green on in March 2017. 16%, 25%, 0%. I made nothing in October 2016, or didn't win a thing. 33%, 44%. So just based on going back to when I was unprofitable, like if I start entering the 40-30% win rate range, my risk reward to how I trade isn't that good enough to overcompensate those losses. So even removing this one bad week, overall, this win rate wasn't great. So in many ways, I really could not kind of gain any momentum. There were a lot more losses, and unfortunately, the losses that mattered the most were way bigger. Hence why this week is huge. And we'll go into that. So let's just jump right in. This week is really due to VERU, and it's not because of VERU. VERU is the stock I traded. I lost because of me, because I just lost all discipline and I took way bigger losses and way too many attempts on this trade than I should have. So if we go into the daily chart here, or the intraday, that was the daily. Went from whatever it was four sub $10 well over into the 15 area, 14, 15 area, and this huge parabolic move. Now I went into this trade in detail at Huddy and Dom's boot camp / conference at the end of April? Yeah, the last week of April. So I went in detail in person there, but I'll go over detail again because obviously more of you weren't there than not. So, but essentially, this is a parabolic short. Now, the problem here is that it's not an ideal parabolic short. It's probably the least ideal. It's probably the least ideal parabolic short you could have. Almost to argue that it's really not a parabolic short at all. Besides that, there is like a parabola going here and eventually ended. But some of the best parabolic shorts, even though they're all risky in general, but the best ones are that they halt up like 3 or 4 or 5 times in a row, because at some point the halts end up ending, and when they halt down, that's the safe time to like, okay, it's halting down, momentum is shifted, I can get short then. Here, it never halted. It just stayed very choppy the entire time, and I didn't recognize that, and it took me too long to recognize that. And by that time, I was already in the hole, and I started digging, and it just led one thing to another, and it ultimately led me to way, way bigger loss. So I do have my trades here. We'll zoom in here. So the first two losses I took, you can barely see the first green area, but there's a green area here and a green area there. Very manageable loss. I think I only lost like between 4 to 5K in this little spot. So very manageable. Quickly realized this parabolic short wasn't working very well. Cut it. The problem is and this is where I really just kind of get caught, and I just don't. This is where I really start to dig in. Is I short again, and it works initially. So I'm like, all right, great. And then within one candle, we're at new highs, and part of me just kind of freezes. And what do? I keep adding, and I add. Also because right here, these ads here weren't that big, and so part of me thought, even though I did freeze, part of me thought, okay, it's not the end of the world. I'm not that big a size. That's a mistake, because that leaves the door to thinking that you can add. The problem is when you add, it goes higher even more than that. It's just a slippery slope, and you keep going and you keep going. So it's the last way you want to do it, and I hate doing it that way, and I've rarely ever done it that way. But when it happens big and it happens bad, and that's what got me today. So I kept adding. I cut it again, like here. I re-added because it looked like a top. Again, I get another pull, but its resiliency to keep holding is incredibly impressive. So finally, I keep cutting again, short some more, cut some more, and by this time, I'm down like 60 grand. Just can't. No, I'm maybe down 70 grand at the highs. Just way too many tries. These two tries should have been it, and I should have just given up. The fact that I held way too long here, cut it here, tried again, cut it there again, tried again, then cut it again. Like, just, you can clearly see I'm 5 or 6 tries into this short that is just not working. It is not ideal, and I'm doing it with way too big a size. So I'm practically losing anywhere from 5 to 15K per attempt, and it just keeps happening and happening and happening. I give it one more attempt. I'm short again. Finally, it is topped out. The terrible part is that I have all this patience to hold till the low 11s. And I remember putting cover orders in like at 11.11, 11.05, 11, even something like the 1090s, just thinking we can get kind of in this little area where this box is. And I remember the low here was 11.13, 2 cents from just even getting me a partial fill of my first cover. And then we bounce big, and this practically gives back my entire gain. I cover on this dip for like a 10K win back, so I end up down about just over $60,000 on this ticker for the day. So really brutal. When I reflect on it, like I said, it just too many tries, too much size. Ignoring the fact that it was not an ideal parabolic short at all. It really was a short that I probably shouldn't take to begin with, or like I said, taking it here, immediately realized it was not the parabolic shorts I like to trade and just avoided it. So it sucks. And I think subconsciously it was a good lesson for me that I hadn't learned before, which was taxes. Like, so everyone's taxes is personal, so I'm not going to get into detail of like how it affected me personally. But this month or this week, is the week before tax day, and by no means by all means did I pay the most I've ever paid in taxes before. Because again, it's a good problem to have because my 2021 was such a great year, led me to paying the most taxes I've ever paid before. And I had to pull a large sum of that out this week, right? And so I think I totally underestimated that effect on me. Now I can't really say for sure whether that made me trade irresponsibly with VERU. I think, like I said, I just took too many attempts and too big a size. But part of me thinks that pulling money out from my account and then having a smaller account that I haven't had in a long time, I think subconsciously affected me. Like I think part of me just didn't feel good seeing a lower amount of money in my account. And so I don't know how maybe that tied into me just being overly aggressive, but it certainly made me feel indifferent about the situation. So it's definitely a good learning experience because I haven't had that before where I've had to pull out a significant chunk, at least as big as I did this year. So that's one little deep psychological effect or indicator that I might have affected me that I should use going forward for previous years or for next year's. But other than that, so that's on the 11th here. The next day, I kind of somewhat redeem myself in the fact that I made, half my loss back on this beautiful red day. I mean, every pop was sold into. If we go, let me exit out this one. Here's the day here. Took a couple paper cuts in the morning, but stayed, let's just get this out here. But stayed stuck to my plan, I should say, kept reshorting, and then I got this beautiful fade down for mainly the move, made 30 grand. And really, I mean, it's just a good lesson that, like, this is all I had to do, right? It's so simple to just ignore the front side and ignore this headache and just wait for the first red day, right? That's really the best lesson you could take away from this, that I could take away from this, is like, it just, especially when it's not ideal, right? If it's a good parabolic short, I would never, regret taking a good trade on a good parabolic short. However, this is not, right? It's choppy. There was no halting up. Volume stayed fairly consistent. There was no one like blow off candle kind of thing. Just not a good one to take. And so when that's the case, it's so much better just to ignore the front side, wait for the backside. And I mean, as you can see, the backside couldn't have been any easier, right? And every bounce, every pop got sold into, and had a beautiful range from the mid 13s all the way down to sub 10 for a few minutes. So really wish I had played it better, but again, it's always a good lesson to learn. And so that's that. Made 30K there. The issue is now the next day after, it came back even stronger, right? I'm being a transparent short seller in that I definitely got rocked here. I got, kind of punched in the face. Many short sellers also got punched in the face that might not share it. And probably even more added more to their position during this red day. And so the next day, this, in hindsight, isn't surprising that it was just incredibly strong and came back, because so many shorts are still trapped in this thing. So the fact that we kept squeezing up, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is giving me another opportunity. This should have another great red day. This is going to be really, really good. And so you can see here, this day is just an absolute chop fest. I mean, massive range up and down. And if you stayed for a little over an hour in any one direction, you kind of got clobbered, right? And so that's unfortunately what happened to me on this day, trying to short for this next red day. Was short, got squeezed out, immediately dumps. I get super frustrated. This is a terrible chase, guys. For me getting short this low under red green after missing, practically this full dollar a share panic to the downside, couldn't have picked a worse entry to start in. And I think I did it though, because I thought this day would be very similar to, this red day. I kind of chased because in my head, I'm like, okay, well, if every pop gets sold into, it shouldn't matter, right? It shouldn't matter that I'm chasing, and it should just die. That was a mistake. That was a big, big no-no. It bounced, I added, and by the time we bounce back red, green, and start testing VWAP here at this little yellow line VWAP, I quickly come to the realization that it is not going to do this kind of move, right? Clearly, this has bounced significantly enough that there is no selling into these pops. This is bouncing way better than I expected, and I should be siding down, if not cutting it. And so when it broke over this like 15 high right here, this little perk, I wanted out. And unfortunately, instead of getting the low 15s, I got at 16. So pretty much a full dollar a share of slippage. So that pretty much doubled my loss. So that really sucks. That really gave a lot back, and actually gave more than my gain. So I made 30K. Like I said, I made 30K on this red day. I lost over 30K pretty much due to that slippage. I shouldn't say not because of the slippage. The slippage doubled my loss. So instead of losing like a little over 15, I lost well over 30. And I just had enough. I clearly stopped trading. I didn't trade the rest of the day. I was like, I don't want anything to do with this thing anymore. I've exhausted myself. I've put myself in the worst week now, because this is on the 14th now, the worst week of my career. I threw in the towel. It's like, I need to step away before it gets any worse, and cut my losses on the big picture, not just per trade, but cut my losses overall of my trading system for this week, because it's been just absolutely piss poor, terrible. So ended that week, just under negative $85,000. It sucks, it hurts, but at the same time, big picture perspective, it's not that bad. When I look back on my trading career, like where have my worst weeks and trades been? One of my most popular videos, if you haven't seen it, I'll link it. Something will pop up here. My nearly $90,000 loss on MNNFF, and I lost that back in, a year and 2 months. I lost that in February on this day, February 11th. Now I lost 90 grand that day. I only ended down the day 50 or 47, and still closed that week up over my best week ever. at $134,000 at the time. So back then, that loss didn't really hurt as bad because it was such a forgiving market. And even then, I had made back half my loss that very same day and was still up over six figures on the week. So just that's how insane that market was. This definitely hurt more because this market is way less forgiving, right? Like losing 85,000 for me, might take another month or two to recover. Even the start of May, like I made $6,000 this week. It's great money. I'll take $6,000 every week all day long. Like that's still great money. But again, from a perspective of how forgiving this market is and me losing 85,000, it's going to be a while, right? So that's what I think made it sting more, that I should not have trading like this even remotely close to this ever. But the fact that I did it in this market environment just kind of really doubles down the pain or the unsatisfaction with how I was trading. And so that's that. And then so once I did that, I pretty much just totally humbled myself and said, no, I need to size down drastically. There's no way I'm ever going to, continue how I've been trading the last 5 years, being green every month if I'm going to keep trading like this. So I sized down drastically. I moved my risk down to $2,500 per trade. Just no ifs, ands, or buts. Like that is the max risk level for all setups. Again, if you've watched some of my videos earlier in the past, I've always talked about how it's always beneficial if you know what your ideal setups are to up your size, because if you get an A+++ trade and you have conviction in it, I'd much rather risk 2, 3, 4x the average loss because I have such conviction, and then size down on the plays that aren't that great. But because of how I've been trading that this week or in April, I sized down everything. I was like, I don't care how ideal it is, I don't care how great it is. $2,500 risk round trip every trade until I get my feet back under me, right? And I think that was kind of what I'm proud of. I mean, I did a great job of that. No red day since then was over 2,500. This was 2,600, but again, I'm doing 2,500 per trade, not 2,500 for the day. So the fact that I kept it this small for the rest of the 2 weeks of April, I was really happy about. Now, unfortunately, the next week, from the 18th to the 21st, it was still frustrating because I just couldn't catch a break, right? I couldn't gain any traction back. I mean, clearly you can see small loss, small win. Just couldn't get anywhere. And part of that was due to ATER. If we go to ATER here, huge run up back in 2021. Unfortunately, I missed this whole move because it was on the reg show list. The reg show list, in short, is like a list of tickers that is harder to short sell. Many brokers are much more strict on if you can borrow there or not, and I couldn't. So I missed these beautiful red days, right? There's a huge red day here, a huge red day there. And so when it was running again up here, I was very excited to thinking that these red days would be very similar, right? And the fact of the matter is, they weren't. They were so much more choppier, especially given my headspace was just not as clean and as focused given my rough week. And so I really blew it on this. I remember shorting almost every day these 3 days here, on the 13th, 14th, and 15th, or an 18th, and each single day was a loss. Like every day, it either wicked me back, squeezed me back, you name it. So I kept taking losses. I then tried to swip biases and said, you know what, this thing has squeezed me out every single day. It clearly wants to break out over the 650 level here. Let's try longing, right? Out of all people who long NASDAQs, I am the last one to do it, and I decided to try to change it up and go long. That didn't work. I sold for a loss on this day, and of course, the day fake out breakout is the day it actually has a first official red day, and that I should have shorted, and I didn't. So once it did that, I then thought to myself, okay, this is officially backside. It's a huge fake out breakout. Another red day should follow, and it did, but I screwed it up brutally. I think I lost $300 on this trade and missed out on potentially close to 5 figures. If we go here this day, so we go to trades, let's exit out here. So ATER, I named this trade Can't Catch a Break because I'm trading so poorly still. And the one trades that could have made a difference, the one trade that actually would have worked if I just traded more better and efficiently, actually would have gotten me to get some momentum, right? Like I said, I was just kind of up and down to break even all week long, and all I had to do was just make one good trade, and this could have been it, and I screwed it up on the 20th and lost like $300. And so if you go to my trades here, get a good start, it starts panicking, I cover a little bit, it bounces back, and unfortunately this is such a terrible cover because it's into the bounce. But unfortunately, I almost would say I had like PTSD on this ticker because, like I said, the days before the breakout, these 3 days here, I mean, every day, gaps down, squeezes, gapped or kind of spiked, pulled, squeezed. And so I lost every single time on this ticker on these days. So when I see that action here and I see it coming back, all I can think about is that I'm going to get squeezed. And so instead of, really sticking to my plan and sticking to my risk level, which would have been either the day high or red green here, I didn't. And I just cut over kind of like this little previous bounce high, which really is not meaningful to the chart at all. And stopped out, didn't re-short, and it dies beautifully. I mean, just way lower than I would have expected. Even if this never bounced, I probably would have been all out by low fives. It goes well into the mid fours, and I miss out. So just a mix of unfortunately, taking my big losses and then trying to get it back on my feet, led me to be very frustrated and didn't feel good. Felt very unmotivated, right? Just tough. And luckily, I did catch a break, and I kind of gained a little bit of confidence back on the 22nd, thanks to DOGZ. Now, DOGZ is what a lot of people would call a China promotion, China pump and dump. I don't know the exact details on them. I'm not nearly as experienced with these as I am with the OTC pump and dumps that have been my favorite setup since I've started trading. These are relatively new that I'm just starting to learn about, still trying to get better at. But essentially, the gist of how I understand them is a lot of these stocks will get walked up on very illiquid volume, or very low volume, I should say. And when bigger volume comes in, it's kind of hard to see on the level 2. It's kind of hard to see on the tape, but I've gotten better at it, considering I've been watching tape for years. But when it comes, they dump big. DOGZ was one. What was it? BWV, is that one? There's been like dozens in the past, like maybe 6-7 months. I mean, just absolute destruction, right? And I haven't been able to trade many of them just because they're tough, but DOGZ was one I actually got to take advantage of, and it just dumped beautifully from mid sixes all the way down to $2. So we go into the intraday chart here, and I kind of got lucky with this. I wasn't even watching it. DOGZ was not on my watch list whatsoever, but I just remember being in a couple chat rooms and seeing people mentioning it. And I'm like, okay, let's just check this ticker out. And I immediately saw how big this volume was. And again, like I just mentioned, like you're looking for big volume. Like big volume is kind of a precursor to it potentially jumping. Sometimes, there might be big volume and it might not dump, but when you get as big as volume as this, considering if you zoom back, there's like, again, no volume at all, and all of a sudden you see kind of this decently significant increase. That caught my attention. And so what I did was, let's go to my charts. So glad I take pictures of all my trades because I just forget them constantly if I don't look back. But yeah, so I missed the initial pull. I noticed how sideways it was going. I noticed this volume. And I thought to myself, if this dumps, big if, but if it's gonna repeat what it did, 6 months ago, right? It's gonna repeat a huge red day just like this, right? And that's exactly what happened. I kind of predicted that pretty well. I got short. I wasn't risking more than $2,500, so a smaller position size than normal, but it just started panicking beautifully. I covered partial into this like the sweet little bounce attempt. My original goal was to cover it all sub 4, but once I kind of got lucky that once it halted down here, it seems like all panic had set in, and it actually gapped down way lower near $3. I almost covered here, but it stayed weak again. It halted down one more time, and then I covered it all again, right just above $2 for like 27 grand. Kind of a scratch trade here. I think I made like a couple $100 back, but the bounce was pretty choppy. But just a big win, like big, awesome win for risking literally $2,500 to then making 10x. I mean, that's a 10-to-1 risk reward. Such an awesome trade. So happy I made it and happy it worked out the way it did. And it kind of gave me my confidence back a little bit. It definitely made me feel good to kind of catch a break, right? Going from just this terrible week and then not being able to even make one decent trade and then coming out with well over a decent trade, like arguably the best risk reward trade I've made in a very long time. So that was really sweet. Coming into the last week, again, back to kind of small losses. The only trade that really made a difference here, and I think that's the biggest learning lesson for me, adapting to this, or the biggest adaptation I made into the later of this month, was on the 26th with EVOK. EVOK, Always has been a runner every so often. If we go back, I believe it's always run. You always have a few runs here and there. Huge dead ugly chart, just been selling off ever since. And before you know it, we're gapping up on this day for some news from 40 cents all the way up to 140. So well over 200%. Even two. I think it's closing in on 300%, right? Like that's 250%. And for those who aren't maybe watching the market as closely, in this environment, nothing is really running that big, right? There's not, since the oil sector, since the oil sector momentum in oil back in the second week of March here, we haven't gotten any true supernova runners, right? Like there just hasn't been as clean of charts. It's been much choppier, in many ways, the overall indexes and kind of maybe the IWM or whatever it's called of the small cap market. Like we're in a bear market. This recession is kind of officially here. And so the small caps are changing, and there hasn't been many great runners, any great multi-day runners. And, maybe in a previous environment, something could have gapped up 100% and then ran 300% or 400%. But the fact that it's gapping up 200% now, and we're in this environment where nothing can really hold its gains, or at least not even have a strong multi-day run, already that in and of itself kind of caught my attention. I was like, 250%, that's a lot for something that isn't that great of news. I don't remember what the news was, but I remember it not being that significant for 250%. Now, however, that wasn't enough for me to just short, right? If you know my strategies, shorting the first red day or shorting the first green day, it's just not my style. Now, did I do that on VERU? Yes. Unfortunately, because I kind of, again, suckered myself into thinking that it was a good parabolic short. If it's a parabolic short, I'll short it whenever. But if it's just a regular trader on a first green day, I'm rarely ever going to trade it. The only time I will trade it is if there's dilution, if there's a significant amount of dilution. So the gap up, like I said, caught my attention. And I said, okay, well, this isn't still enough for me to short. Is there dilution? Because if there is, then that changes the game. Then that changes the idea that I actually do want to get short, and it could be a possibly good trade. Now, I'm not going to go into huge detail on how to look for dilution. I'm not really that great. I really don't do it that often. Like I said, I only looked because of the gap up. If it never gapped up that much, I would never have even looked. But BAM SEC is a great spot to look. I mean, you just type in, I'll do EVOK because it's this example, and all right here. Like the 424 B5s, there's all the I think there's B3, B6s, all the S3s, all the S8s. This is where you can find your dilution. And I forget which one it was, and sort of the simplicity of the video, I'm not going to go into detail of where it was, but if you want to get good, just get into digging and reading these filings. But they had an ATM. They had a very large ATM. I believe it was at least 30 million shares to sell or dollars to sell. And given, the stock's only there's only $1.40 up here, $30 million worth is at least minimum 30 million shares. That's a lot. I know this traded 20 million shares on the day here, but to sell $30 million worth of stock on such a low priced stock like this, that's a lot. And so I immediately realized, okay, if they do sell, if they do take advantage of this news and this gap up to sell their ATM, and again, ATM meaning they can sell it at whatever price they want at the market is what ATM stands for. This thing should not stay up 250% of the day, right? This thing's going to this thing is going to sell off nicely. And so that's what I was looking for. Typically, I don't like just shorting right out of the gate. That's kind of why I avoid first green days in the general, because I just have no idea what's going to happen. But given the dilution, given my conviction that they were going to dilute, I mean, the very first minute that happened, I immediately saw how heavy it was, and I was like, there's no other way that this couldn't be this heavy in the price action and tape if they weren't diluting. Now, how do I see that? I mean, it's been years. I unfortunately have no way to communicate it to you other than the fact that it was just all this tons of selling pressure, tons of people on the ask, tons of people hitting the bid, and there was no chance of it spiking, right? So that's why you see me getting short pretty damn quickly, because I just knew if dilution lasted for even more than 5 minutes, which again it usually does, especially being $30 million worth, it's gonna die. It's going to die quickly. So I got short as much as I could. Still reasonable risk, risking about 3K. Again, I pushed it $500 more than my average loss I wanted to take. But again, given the ATM, I was willing to just push it just a little bit over. and it worked beautifully, right? It just faded super nicely. I was pretty happy with my patience on here. Thought it was going to go lower than it did in the morning, and it ended up doing that late day. So you do see I ended up covering a little bit back into a bounce. But overall, super happy with it. Ended up making like 13K on it, which is from this day. And that's pretty much why my week ended up green that day or that week. And that's that. So all these other trades, I mean, just small losses, small wins, very similar to my ATERs, just something that didn't go the right way. And so ultimately my win rate, still ended up 38%, pretty low. But to make 2 green weeks to end close off the month, and then finishing the month down negative 45 grand, after being down way more, right? Feels good. It doesn't, obviously losing 45 grand doesn't feel great, obviously. I'd much rather be green, but I think I've resolved my internal feelings about this month or about this week, right? I'm much more in a better place to go forward with it. This week on what we're May 2nd through 6th, 6 grand, so smaller green week. I'll go over it in more detail next month on the review. So I will get back to doing monthly reviews, guys. I will not just make this and then just vanish for another 4 months or so. But I mean, if you don't follow me on Twitter, I mean, January I made 55K, February I made 83, and then March I made 118, specifically because of this huge 100K day from the oil sector. So overall, I'm up about 200 250. I know I'm up 250 for certain without the borrows, but I'm not sure after borrow fees when I'm up. But so we'll see. This likely will be the first year, given how tougher it is, that I make less than I did the year prior. So from 2016 to 2021, every year I've made more, right? And we can almost look at that. We can do that here real quick that I do in the end of the yearly reviews that I make. So what is it here? 2017 made 5K. 2016 I didn't even do it, but I lost 4K. 2017 5K. 2018 30K. 2019 92. 2020 almost 700. 2021 almost 2.1 million. Which I did review in my December recap, which if you haven't seen that, go watch that as well. I think I was pretty happy with. I mean, I couldn't have been more happy with the year. It was an incredible year, and I talk about that. All these stats, I talk about that in that video. But, so here we go. Yeah, 250. Then now this profit doesn't include borrow fees here. That's why I said 250 earlier. So, who knows what will happen the next 7 months? It could be the next seven best months I've ever traded in my life. It could be the worst 7 months I've ever traded in my life for the rest of the year. But just based on how the first 4 months have gone, this will probably be the first year that I make less than the previous year. And that's okay, right? Like if my 2.1 million here is going to set the bar super high in arguably one of the best markets we've seen at least I've seen in my career, and then many traders have seen in the last decade or two, I'll take it. Because the reality is, even if I close the year right here with 250, making 250 a year is still in the top 3-4% of income earners in the world, right? Probably the top 1% if you want to include in the world, but still top 3 or 4% in America. And we're only 4 months in. So I still feel pretty good about it. I'm still optimistic about how the rest of the year will go. This market doesn't mean the market necessarily will get easier. It could just get even tougher, given that we really are in a recession at this point. Less things might run, but ultimately, trading safe and not doing stupid stuff like this will keep me in the game, right? If I just kept trading like this, then yeah, my account will be gone very quickly, and that's kind of what happens to a lot of traders. Like a lot of traders can crush it in a great market. A lot of traders can crush it in this kind of a market where you have your biggest loss ever and you still end up 6 figures on the week, right? It's easy to trade that market. It's not easy to trade one of these markets and then stay alive and then be back and then still have an account after that to then be back for when this market comes back, right? Will this market come back as insane as it was? I don't think it'll be as insane, but it goes in cycles, right? There's always tough markets and there'll always be easier / good markets. And so surviving through the tough times and following proper risk management and keeping yourself in the game is gonna be the reason why you then will stride or make new strides and ultimately new highs. At least I am confident I'll make new highs in my profit chart or in profits. Just being good, keeping my risk small, following good risk management, as I mentioned, and just staying alive and staying safe in this tougher market. So that's pretty much it, guys. I'm glad to be back. I feel better after making this video. I actually kind of makes me want to go back and watch other videos because I've always benefited from making these and watching my own self play it back. But yeah, like I said, so for May, and I don't know what to expect. Any one day can be the end of me if I don't follow good risk management, and any one good day under good trading can ultimately lead to another great day like it was on March. So thanks so much, guys. I will catch you guys next time. Good luck with trading in May, and I will see you at the end of the month. Peace.